Marina Bos-De. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Your area is strategic design for ecosystem innovation. What does this entail?
Yeah, well, what I'm looking at in my research is the way that people from different disciplines, different organizations, the way that they try to reshape their own ways of working, their ways of organizing, and their ways of collaborating. And by doing that, also change the ecosystems that they are part of. And I'm particularly interested in also understanding and figuring out, like, what role can designers play here? And especially, a strategic designer, so thinking a bit more strategically about the processes that these people engage in.
And what do you mean by strategic?
I mean that by thinking on a strategic level, that you can really formulate and implement strategy in collaboration also with the other actors that are involved in these different projects. So I think it's not only important to work on products, on services, and on entire circular supply chains, business models, but also to really think about what are the strategies that we are actually working towards.
And not just strategies, you're also focused primarily on values, which I thought is such an interesting concept to bring into play when you talk about strategy, but also circularity.
Yeah. Well, my personal fascination is indeed the role of values, and I can maybe explain this a little bit with also the project that I'm engaging in with Ellen Lotz in the circular economy.
If you want to show some of the images, you do have a click on it if you want to.
Indeed, show some slides. So. What we do is that we study circular design projects, and in these projects we see that people actually co-create something beautiful together. So they are establishing this really pretty joint garden together that should make the world a little bit more beautiful. And in a way, they do that in some kind of a protected environment. They first experiment and try to figure out what is working, what is not working. But eventually, of course, this jar has to be taken off. And then it's really about, how can you make it blossom, this circular economy? So how can you make sure that all these beautiful flowers that you're planting together, how can they actually spread? And that is where I think value can play a really big role. By looking at these flowers as representing value. So I think you are together in these processes, co-creating different dimensions of value and different dimensions of worth in a way, something that you can really reap benefits of.
What are these different dimensions of values?
Yeah, so maybe I can show this a little bit here. So what we see happening in a lot of these circular design projects is that the people involved in these projects, they kind of have to mix different kinds of value. So on a way, you want to establish knowledge, you also want to protect raw materials, you also need to be able to make profit in order to run successful businesses such as Jonna already mentioned. And this is a really tricky balance. And often in the projects, it's you're somehow able to realize that balance over time. So the current knowledge and tools, they really support realizing this balance of worth. Mm-hmm. But we also see that often when the projects are over or when something valuable has been established, that certain dimensions of worth grow a lot, while other dimensions just fail to succeed. So, for example, the profit might just disappear.
Or take over.
Or take over, that's also a possibility indeed. And why I look at values is that I think a lot of people see values as indeed the word that you realize, but there's also another perspective of looking at values, and that's the perspective of seeing values as some kind of guiding principles that direct the people in these projects and the organizations behind them to desire something or to do something. And
more as drivers, almost.
Yeah, as drivers indeed. And that is often what is not looked at that much, at least what we see in our research.
Not as consciously, maybe, because it's always there.
It's always there, yeah.
But you feel when you make it more apparent and you talk about it, the balance and the driving can become a bit more, let's say, guided the way you want it to be.
Yeah, we think that indeed there is a lot of maybe opportunity still in trying to reach those values that are beneath the surface and that are actually driving the decisions that people or organizations make to realize these beautiful gardens, to get them a bit more out. So to understand what are these values below the surface, and also when do they play a role, or what kind of role do they even play. And yeah, to give an example, they can be very supportive. So if you as a person or an organization are very curious to develop new knowledge, then of course this knowledge tree will grow. But if you are, for example, having a culture that allows you to, or that requires you to respect tradition in your company, or to reach certain achievements, then it's very difficult for certain flowers to blossom and to be able to put them inside other organizations and even across the entire ecosystem.
Yeah. So the values that you have within your organization are quite important when it comes to any maybe new steps you want to take or new research you want to do, if they can also maybe be holding them back and you don't know that this is part of your culture. So that will then influence your success in what you want to achieve in that sense.
Yeah, I definitely think so. So what we see in the research that we've done, so we spoke to a lot of front runners in circular economy from all kinds of industries, from academia, from design, etc. And what we see is that thinking about the time and the context that they are working on can really help to be able to realize value. So we see that they often try to reach that kind of balance, but we also see that a lot of tensions are behind this, below the surface that are actually not really spoken about.
Could you give an example of attention?
Yeah, so one example is that, for example, we have a lot of companies participating in circo tracks, etc. In tracks that actually help them to establish circular products, but also the business behind it. But then this is very difficult for people in small companies to even attend these tracks or to reserve time to be there, let alone to disseminate the things that they learn in these events within their own organizations. And that is often because the people in these organizations, they value different kinds of things. So they are, of course, also they want to do something good, but they are also worried about their own career, for example, or they just need to make enough money to even sustain themselves. So in a way,
So based on these discussions and the study that you've done, is there anything that you could maybe recommend to researchers, for instance, and organizations in the audience?
Yeah, well, I think it would be really nice to look not only at the tools that we have now and the approaches that we have for thinking about value that you co-create and value that you do not want to miss or that you do not want to destroy, but also really think about ways to address these hidden values and to actually figure out in our organizations, in the entire ecosystem, what are the aspects that play a role there, and how can you, through design practices, design tools, how can you actually bring these values more to the surface and discuss them together?
Yeah. Because then, of course, it would be much easier to, as a whole, move towards a circular business model or other circular products. What is the next step for your research here? Where are you going with all of this?
Yeah, what I really want to do is to really understand this in detail and to, with the examples that we now gather, to really try to analyze what kind of aspects do play a role, so that we end up with some kind of a more meta view of value co-creation processes, specifically in circular economy projects, but of course also in other transition projects, so that people can also see where the big opportunities lie for for doing something new and for exploring ground that they didn't explore before.
Right. Or maybe there are organizations or projects here in the audience who would like to be part of that, because that, of course, can be very enlightening. So I'm sure you'll be here for a little while after the talk show.
Yeah, that would be great. If there is people who would like to join, I'm very excited to have a talk indeed.
And let's see if there's anything that you'd like to know now. You know the drill. Wave at me, do your walk of fame to the microphone and ask away. Can't really, there needs to be quite some waving for me to be able to see it. Yeah, there you go. You can walk right up. Thank you so much.
Hi, thanks for your talk. I think it's very interesting to look at these values.
Could you possibly?
Yeah, sorry, Daan van Eyck, also TU Delft, a colleague, I should say. Nice to meet you here. Always difficult with all these people. Of course, you're aiming at to make the translation to practice. Of course, now you focus on the analysis, but can you maybe, a little bit more say what you see, what type of values, what are really the problems, and maybe also a part of we do co-creation together, what could be specifically in this difficult topic be a way of working? I wouldn't say a new methodology or a new toolkit, but a little bit talk about this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for your question. So to give an example, what we see is that there is people who are, for example, they are setting their own deadlines. So acting in a way on the time dimension to show their results to a bigger audience. And that results in actually ecosystems being part of the whole transition that they are making. So we had an example in which they set such a deadline, and then there just happened to be a person that was interested in it, and it became for them the opportunity to have a tender procedure and actually have competitors also working on the same ambitions. So in a way, this setting the deadline was a way to also involve a broader context. And to give an answer to your question, what I see as opportunities is to really delve into those areas where they are not doing so much yet. So there is not so much attention for example, the history behind the organizations or the values, the more cultural values that people have in their process. And I think that there also design could play a very valuable role in trying to figure out like where do these kinds of aspects influence the decisions that are made.
Thank you so much. I think that it's such an interesting way of thinking about the circular process, and I'm sure that will benefit many organizations. Marina, Bos-De,
Thank you
so much.